Hi, welcome to WWT's Live Lab Workshop. I'm Kristen Schneider, Product Manager for Labs and Learning Path, and today we are going to be going through Palo Alto Next Gen Firewall with the lab creator, Matt Vollmer. So a couple housekeeping items before we get started. In the chat, you can ask questions throughout the live lab launch, and we highly encourage you to actually click the link, launch the lab alongside of us for the best experience possible. And with that, I'm going to toss it over to Matt to go through the lab.
Hey everybody. So before we get started, I quickly just want to talk about the history of the lab and my history here at Worldwide. So as she mentioned, my name is Matt Vollmer. I've been here for nearly 2 years full-time now, and prior to that I was an intern at Worldwide for 2 years. They had me start on this lab. I was just, updating software documentation, and then it's come to how now I'm the primary owner of the lab. I've also created other labs. So most of you probably know about Worldwide's labs. This lab that we're doing, the Foundations version 10 lab. We also have a intermediate version 10 lab, and I'm actually working on adding more content to this lab right now. So if that's something you're interested in at some time, please take a look. We also have the Foundations version 11 lab. Palo, I don't exactly remember when they released version 11, but it's a new software version than 10. So if you'd like to look at that and try out your organization's configuration on that, feel free. Also, something that we've done new within the last year and some change is we've created learning paths. So these learning paths, we realize not everyone has time to do these massive labs. For example, the lab we're working through today, I think if you were to do it from start to scratch, it could take you like 3 hours, and most people don't have time for that. The modules are designed to be done individually, but even still, it's a pretty big lab, and some people just want to read a single article or watch a video about a certain topic. So we made these learning paths, and there's one for the fundamentals and one for the intermediate version 10 labs, where you can read various articles, watch videos, stuff that goes along with the lab. There's even some additional content that isn't in the lab because some of these things I can't demonstrate in a repeatable fashion in the lab. So they have to be a video or an article. So that exists for the fundamentals and the intermediate. And all this content is regularly available on the platform. Please feel free to take a look. Now, I believe you guys all have a link to the lab. Your page should probably look something like this. And you should have an option to launch your lab over here or view launched lab. I'm going to assume we can all see it. I don't know if you guys say yes in chat or something if we're looking good. Perfect. My environment will look a little bit different than your guys's, but you guys should have something like this. Oop, hold on. It should be like the window. Let me just close this. You'll have like your Windows lab jump box here. And then off to the side, you'll have your documentation. Mine is pulled up in the web browser so you guys can maybe see it a bit better. But let's go ahead and jump into it. So feel free to skip to the environment tab. You should have like a little thing that lets you skip tabs. So here it talks about all the virtual machines in the lab. We have a bunch of VMs and a bunch of networks because this lab is designed to be done. Not only do you follow the modules in the lab, but if you wanted to, you could test out your organization's own configuration. This is like a fully licensed firewall, and there's several networks, several other firewalls they talk to, Panorama. There's lots of integrations. So if you wanted to, you could, bring your own organization stuff and do testing before you do it in your environment. This just talks about all the firewalls and networks and other VMs in the lab, and on the network map. This talks about getting into the lab, what the lab topology looks like, but I'm going to teach you guys all this stuff. And then here, this shows username and password. So if you're doing anything, poking around, here you can find username and passwords for everything else you might need. All right. Let's go ahead and jump into it. So in your lab, we'll go ahead and launch the web browser here. And you'll see immediately we have a bunch of the bookmarks here. We'll jump over to the branch pan firewall 1, or branch 1 firewall. And the username and password is lab user and lab pass 01. There's an X or capital L. Yes, we know it's a common password. And you can find that in the documentation if I didn't say that clearly. So this first module in the lab is all about getting to know the environment. So it talks about stuff like, it talks about just looking around, seeing the software version. We look at our security policies. We have some very, very safe security policies, such as my allow all temporary policy. Probably don't do that. So the first thing that we talk about here, besides poking through the environment, this is all just getting familiar with the firewall. And I'm not going to go through this in detail because we'll be doing this in the actual lab, so you guys will get to see this. We don't need this fluff. Yeah, let's look at licenses. So as I mentioned, the firewall is fully licensed. If we come down here, you can see all the licenses we have. I have a couple that are expired on mine. I don't think you guys even have those licenses. I was doing something I wasn't supposed to, so I have those popped up here. But all the labs, or all the licenses should fully exist. Oh, and one thing to note is this lab is designed to be done in oh my god. Each module can be done independently. And so some things you do in one of the modules might make it impossible to do something in a different module. And so in order to avoid that, come over here and we can load our configuration snapshot. And this is device setup operations. And here we can load named configuration. So let's go ahead and load the initial lab config. Run that. And this takes not even a second. And once that's done, we can come over here, commit our changes, and this will make sure we're all in the same spot with the lab currently. Just give this a second to load. While that's loading, let's go ahead and I'm going to hit close here. One thing I like to point out with the lab is with a firewall, one of the hardest things to demonstrate is the user doing stuff in the environment. This is supposed to emulate a real production environment, and these labs are spun up and torn down every time you guys launch them. And so as a result, there usually isn't a lot of actual network traffic. And because of that, we've added artificial traffic to the environment. You guys won't be able to do that today because we only have enough for 10 people to run it concurrently. It only takes like a couple minutes for it to run the artificial traffic, but since there's so many people using these labs, we didn't pay for all those licenses because this is an outlier. Normally people don't all do it at once. We should be done now. Let's see if that commit button grays out there. If it'll load. I'm on the guest Wi-Fi here at the corporate headquarters, so it's pretty slow. There we go. We're all grayed out. So now let's get started. Let's do something in the actual firewall. This stuff talks about configuring the dashboard. You could set it up to your personal preference. I'm not too worried about that. Let's talk about dynamic updates. So one feature of Palo is they can update the firewall with the newest software updates and security updates. They come through, I think there's a new antivirus update like every day, if not even quicker than that. And you can set up a schedule to do these automatically for you. I would recommend just downloading them, not always installing, because it could, break one of your firewall rules or something. But let's talk about schedule. So right here, antivirus, we just checked for an update just now by hitting this refresh button over here because I have this page set to refresh manually. But we'll set up a schedule and we can just make it occur how often we want it. So we'll check for updates every hour. Minute past the hour, we'll just leave that blank. Action, we just want to download. We don't want to install. Hit OK. So now every hour, our firewall will check to see if there's any new antivirus updates published by Palo Alto. As you can see down here for app and threats, I already have that set up to run every 30 minutes. Some of these other ones we don't. This one's real time for WildFire, for example. WildFire is Palo's malware inboxing. So anytime it sees a file it hasn't seen before, it'll send it off to WildFire, detonate that. And if it is a virus, it'll publish to you immediately. And I think any other Palo customer will get it within like the next day, so that every Palo firewall will know that's a virus. This check now button over here will make sure that we're up to date. As you can see, you can also upload and install from files. So if there's like a custom antivirus or app and threats that you wanted to do, you could do that there. We'll go ahead and commit our changes real quick. And now our firewall, every 30 minutes, or excuse me, every hour, will be checking for the antivirus updates. Next practical here. This is just talking about what I just said. Yeah, okay. Let's go ahead and let's go to Module 2. So over here in Module 2, let's talk about policy creation. So policies are like one of the biggest things for a firewall. A traditional firewall policy is, allowing certain IPs, blocking certain IPs. Well, next generation firewalls go a lot further beyond that, obviously. So we're going to set up a firewall rule that will only allow certain network traffic for certain users and on certain devices. So let's navigate back over here. This is just about done. So to begin, come over to objects, and I think it's in addresses where we want to start. Yeah, object addresses. And we're going to go ahead and add 3 objects real quick. We're going to add this IP address for our corporate user. And that's an IP. Okay. Then we'd like to add 2 domains, Facebook and LinkedIn. You know, websites that we probably don't need our users using on the corporate computer. Facebook. Remove. No, I need this guy. Facebook.com. I could have figured that out. Whatever. And then we need LinkedIn as well. So we'll change this to fully qualified domain name and linkedin.com. Did I spell that right? Yes, sir. All right. Now that we've added our 3 address objects, let's look at adding a service object. So by default, let's see, here we are. I have HTTP and HTTPS in here already. We're going to add DNS. DNS. And I think it's 53. Yes, 53. Okay, we'll go ahead and add that. And now let's look at groups real quick. So obviously in a real firewall, you'd probably have more than just these 3 addresses. And so you can create those into groups to help you reuse those faster. And actually, I think it wants me to start with a service group. No, we're going to do an object group. Okay. So we'll create an address group, corporate users. And we'll add the corporate user we just created, corporate user 1. So now this saves you the hassle of having to add, when we're editing our firewall policy, instead of adding 1 user at a time, now we can just add all of our corporate users. Or this could be like HR users to give them access to a payroll system or a reporting system, stuff like that. And then we also need to make a service group. Yeah, so let's go over here to service groups. If I can find it. Not tags, service groups. Name this web browsing. And we'll add DNS and HTTP. I think. I want to make sure it's not HTTPS. Correct. Okay. Now that we've done that, let's go ahead and commit our changes, and then we'll look at what it looks like now. So before we update our security policy, and while this is committing, we'll go onto the desktop here, and there's a folder called RDP Sessions. So this shows some of the other virtual machines in the same environment that I was telling you guys about earlier. There's a bunch of different Windows machines in different, actually in some of Kali as well, in different networks. But we're going to launch the Branch 1 Windows 10 client. That's referencing our Windows or corporate user 1 account. So get this guy logged in. And just to test, we can go to the worldwide website. We can go to neverssl.com. We can even go to LinkedIn right now. Now, let's go ahead back to our firewall. Nope, still committing. Just give us just a second here. I feel like some percentages take longer than others. I don't know if it's being totally honest with me. There we are. We'll come over to our security policy. And that really secure allow all temporary rule I was telling you guys about, we're going to delete internet out of the source and destination for our security policy. And I think that's it. Let me double check before I commit again. Yep, we got it. Okay. So then we get to go ahead and commit again. And now, in our branch user here, we shouldn't be able to access these websites once it's done committing, because we've deleted the internet zone out of this source and destination, so it's no longer able to access the internet on our allow all temporary rule. While this is going, I want to touch on something real quick. One of the biggest features of this lab is we use the same environment for all of the Palo labs, or the Palo firewall labs. So if you were to do the intermediate or fundamental lab and you wanted to test the same configuration on either, you can just upload and download that from, and copy that out to your desktop. You can reuse that on any side. You can also, as I mentioned, take your customer or your company's firewall. If you guys use Palo, you can take that same config and port it over. It may not be one-to-one, but you can still test features on our firewall because it's a fully licensed firewall. All right, great. We're all committed. So let's come back over here. And these should spin forever. Oh, this one immediately errored out. Perfect. So now our users don't have access to the internet at all, which is also not great, but it's probably better than allowing all traffic whatsoever. So now let's go down here. We're going to add a new rule called web browsing. This is going to give our users access to use the internet. Web browsing. Oop, wrong button. So we need to set the source to the branch. So come over here to the source, branch LAN, and the destination is the internet. And that should be everything. Oh, yes, services. We need to set this to web browsing. Cool. Now you can see our new rule right here underneath our allow all temporary. Let's go ahead and commit this change as well. Oh, and make sure that the action is set to allow. I think it's allow by default, but I didn't look at that. Yeah, it is. Right there. Action allow. Because we want to allow them to use the internet. Anyway, when this is done, they should still be able to access this Never SSL, but not these other two websites. And that's because the Never SSL is an HTTP website. Remember back when we were adding to our object over here, our web browsing group, we've only allowed DNS and HTTP. So any HTTP website we can access, but not HTTPS, which would be like our actual corporate website. And let's just double check, see if this worked. It might still be committing. I closed it early. No pending changes. I don't know what address it is, but this should connect now. Yep. So we can still visit our HTTPS or HTTP websites, and as you can see, it says not secure because it's just HTTP. But websites like our corporate website or LinkedIn, you cannot access because those are over HTTPS, which is secured. All right. Let's head to, I think they're, not sure what's going on in the podcast booth here. Let's head to policy security. Oop. And we're going to edit our web browsing rule. And we're going to change, I think it's the services. No, excuse me, the applications. So we want to add 3 applications from this list, being DNS, SSL, I believe it's the second one, and yeah, web browsing. Okay. And it doesn't look like we have any dependencies. But now we're going to go back in here and delete out this web browsing rule. Let's hit OK. Okay. Oh, let me make sure that says application default. It does. Perfect. All right, let's commit this change. And make sure that your rule looks something like this. I'm sorry if that's a little small, but if you're following along, you should have that DNS, SSL, web browsing, and then back to application default over here in service. And now, whenever we go back and once this is done committing, we should have access to all these websites. And that's because we added the SSL, DNS, and web browsing to the application. as opposed to just being in our service there. Cool. Committed successfully. It doesn't say 100 though. There it goes. All right. And now if I hit refresh, it's going to make a liar out of me, I guess. But maybe it's not done committing. There we go. Now we have access to the worldwide website. And we can still access the SSL website. neverssl.com. Ta-da. Now let's add more applications. So we talked about Google, Facebook. Oh, we talked about Facebook and LinkedIn, but not Google yet. But let's see if we can get LinkedIn to access our web browsing rule. So now we got to go back in here and modify our web browsing rule. Applications. And Palo filters most of this for you. I believe we're just searching for, yeah. So go ahead and start by searching for Google. And we need Google Base, if we can find it in here. Google Base. We need Facebook. Let's take Facebook. And LinkedIn. As you can see, this depends on field over here is populating. And we want to add all of these to the current rule. We need to add all the dependencies because some of these websites require different protocols to authenticate. So if we add all that, we should actually be able to enforce this rule properly. And Palo populates that information for you. So as you remember, we made the web browsing ourselves, but some of this is populated automatically by Palo. And before I commit, I want to see if there's anything else to this step. Nope. Good to commit. All right. Commit. While this is committing, I want to talk about Expedition real quick. One of the features we get asked to add to Palo a lot is, or the Palo Lab, is Palo Alto's Expedition. Expedition is a tool that converts existing firewall configurations to a Palo configuration. So if you're using this lab to test out some other firewall, or if you are using this lab in your own environment and you want to see what it would look like on a Palo, you can use this. The credentials are in the lab guide. You can port over to Palo.
Hey, Matt, while this is loading, do you mind if I ask you one of the questions from chat?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So we got a question saying, can you use the lab for other firewall tasks beyond what the lab guide discusses?
Absolutely. So as I had mentioned, the lab is set up to show you just a couple features, but this being a fully licensed Palo VM series firewall and the fact that it is a massive product, like you can use Palo for so much stuff. I'm coming up with new use cases every day. You can absolutely use this for anything you can think of. And if there's something you want to see in the lab or in the intermediate version of the lab, feel free to send me an email with suggestions. I'm always open to suggestions. We're always adding to the Palo Lab.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, looks like we're done here. Let's see. All right, so we should still have access to NeverSSL. We still have access to the worldwide website. And now we should have access to LinkedIn. Yep. That's because we added LinkedIn to as an approved application here, and we have all the same required dependencies for LinkedIn. Ta-da! I'll show you Facebook and Google too, because you don't believe me. Facebook.com. Yep. Oh. Well, I'm blocked from Facebook because that's our artificial traffic. We access Facebook a lot, so they get mad. And we'll go to google.com, even though I was on Chrome already. Yep, access to Google. All right. So now let's talk about URL filtering. URL filtering is a process of allowing people to go to certain websites. Well, let me explain like this. Like we were just doing, we allowed users to go to LinkedIn, Facebook, but they don't want us, and Google. Now, that works. We can go website by website, but that's really slow. Same thing with, like, I was talking about adding users. You can add a user at a time, but why would you do that? So instead, Palo has this feature called URL filtering, which basically every website out there is put into a category by Palo, so you don't have to worry about that. And you can allow or deny people access to that category of websites. So let's set up URL filtering here, and I think we're going to block shopping. I don't remember exactly, but that's what it says right there. So let's go to Objects, Security Profiles, and URL filtering. And there is a default one here, but we're going to make our own. I lied, we're going to clone that one. So go ahead and clone. And I think we do leave that checkbox alone. Okay. On some of them, we have to change the checkbox. But I'll get there. All right. Let's click on our new cloned rule. And if you click on the name there, you can edit it. So let's change this to Web Filter. And we're going to search for these categories. And we're going to set them to block. Web Filter. Okay. Shopping. We want to block anyone that's trying to shop on their corporate laptop. And there it goes, peer-to-peer. Peer-to-peer. There we go. You have to hit enter for it to search. I was like, why isn't it updating? Block. So now it's set to block. Double check that I got shopping right. Yep, block. Okay. And then we're going to come back over here to our security policy. Web browsing. Oop. And it's in actions, yes. So we can set this to profiles. See, Palo has security policies, which are the rules, the overall arching firewall rules, and security profiles, which are, like a subset of rules that go inside the policy. So URL filtering is one of those. You can make a group of these in case you didn't want to do it all at once, which is this group option here. Or you can do one at a time. That's what we're doing. So we're just going to set this to individual profile, URL filtering, and we're going to add our new web filter. And we should be good to commit, but let me double check because I don't want you guys sitting through my commit times. Yep, looks like we're good to go. All right. Commit. Well, it's committing, as you can see. Once we try to access these shopping websites and peer-to-peer, I guess, it'll block them. And as you kind of maybe saw in that screenshot, a little bit of spoilers, but when we go to these websites, you get hit with like a default login screen. Looks like the same thing here. We've accessed Amazon too many times. But once this is done committing, we won't be able to access Amazon anymore, so that's not a problem. But a little bit of spoilers. The splash screen that you show people can be edited to like your own corporation. So by default, it's just like some gray, you can't go to this website. But in the learning path, one of the videos, I show how to make that custom for organizations. So I have like a big like WWT, you can't access, whatever. Just kind of cool stuff. It gives them a reason why. You can also set it, instead of just completely blocking, you can set it to alert, like just send a notification to like the network admin saying, hey, someone was doing something they weren't supposed to. Or you can do, I think it's called like a false positive. So you can have them like justify why they're accessing that website. Like sometimes you may not want your users to be on YouTube, but there's like an informational video on YouTube. So you can be like, I'm watching this for work. You can explain it and then it will go through and can be approved. Okay, let's try to go to Amazon again. Amazon is one of those tricky ones because they have a bunch of dependencies, so we may not get Amazon to work correctly. Yeah, it doesn't look like it. Let's try this peer-to-peer. I think that's peer-to-peer. I don't know what this website is. Yep, webpage blocked. Category peer-to-peer. Let's see if we can go to shopping.com. Is that a website? Maybe I shouldn't look that up live. We'll call that good. But you can just trust me that we can no longer block or go to shopping websites. Okay. I don't want to talk about zone protection. That doesn't show very well. Yeah, we have Kali in the lab, so you could do a... we basically send a flood to ourselves, and the Palo firewall protects you. This is a lot of typing in terminals, though. But you can set it up to, if there's so many requests at once, it'll deny that and block that. Same thing with the quality of service. You can set it up to have like a minimum quality of service or like a maximum. So in the lab, we have this 10-hour fireplace video that goes forever. And we set it up so that we're not using so much bandwidth on this one guy who's watching 10 hours full HD fireplace on the corporate network. All right. I just want to mention Policy Optimizer. So we just spent a lot of time with the security policies today. And Palo does a really good job of showing you what websites you viewed. And this is one of those things, like, see, we've seen some traffic today because I've been poking around the lab, but generally you wouldn't see a ton of network traffic. And that's because this is a fake environment. So if you wanted to see real network traffic, let's minimize this. We have this execute traffic thing. We don't have enough licenses for everyone to do it at once, so we're not going to talk about this or not do this today. But basically what this does is a script that pretends to be people and it sends a bunch of traffic. It goes to different websites, even some malicious websites, so we can test like things like WildFire. And this will actually populate all of our firewall logs and let us use other things like a new app viewer, WildFire. It just makes the security policies actually have a hit count, like days with new apps. I ran it today, so there's been new apps seen today, just because I've done that today. Yeah. Do we have any more questions, Kristen?
Yeah. Were there any challenges that you experienced while you were building this Palo Alto Next Gen Firewall lab?
Yeah, so one of the biggest issues we had is, this is one of the, okay, there's been a couple. This is one of the biggest labs that we have. It takes up a lot of storage, and we have a pretty big, the ATC is massive. We can support lots of labs, but this lab takes a really long time to QA. And so whenever I finish updating the lab, I send it off to the QA team before it gets sent to you guys to be able to use it. And part of that is trying to reduce the time it takes them to QA it so we can get it back up faster. For example, one of the issues that we talked about over here is setting up these automatic virus updates every hour. So while the lab is launched, it's doing this, but whenever you guys are done, it tears it back down. So these don't actually get saved. And in order for a Palo firewall to stay licensed, it can update itself automatically. It'll get the license from the server and update itself. But it can't do that if your antivirus hasn't been updated in a certain amount of time. I think it's like 3 months. So that was one of the challenges, is making sure that I launch the lab, get the antivirus update, refresh the keys on the licenses, getting that all done, and doing that every 3 months. But then also making sure that the lab is in a state that I can submit it to QA to not take up all their time. Because I have 3 different labs now. There's going to be more eventually. So they all use the same environment, so I can only submit it once. They have to QA it once. We're good to go.
Great, thank you. From chat, what was the biggest thing you learned about introducing BreakingPoint into the environment?
Okay, so BreakingPoint is really complicated. And a big shout out to Justin Girdler. I don't think he's watching right now, but he's on standby in case anything went wrong. It's a really complicated process. This is perfect right here. I pulled up the session browser. So BreakingPoint, it sends a lot of network traffic to this firewall VM. And it floods it so much. I just learned that today. Apparently Facebook has told us we can't do it anymore because we've accessed Facebook so many times. But the session browser here, this is one of the things that I had to learn about. We send so many requests, Palo leaves like the channel open, for a better way to explain it. So that way, it doesn't spam us with like firewall logs. But as a result, I can't make it show you guys, like in here, we won't see a new app or a new traffic until I've ended the session browser. So like it keeps the session alive. I have to come in here and kill the session for you guys. It's part of the lab guide now, but you kill the session and then it'll actually show up as a new app that has been seen today, or it'll show up as a traffic log. So that was one of the biggest things. Also, I kind of have to like cheat the system a little bit, because once Palo has seen a malicious file, it knows that malicious file. And so for WildFire to work properly, it needs new malicious files, and I can't put actual live malware in the ATC. So BreakingPoint sends the fake malicious traffic, but now Palo has seen that. So it's going to upload that to all Palo firewalls. So now every Palo firewall knows my example. And so I kind of just spoof. I have you look at the most recent log, but it's not actually super recent because I can't create a new log for you. So those are some of the challenges with adding BreakingPoint.
Great, thank you. Another question. What are some additional features what features can we expect to see added to Palo Labs?
Yeah, so right now I'm adding stuff to the intermediate level Palo Lab. Stuff like data loss provisioning. That was one of the requested features, is people wanted to see how does Palo do DLP. What's it called? The Cloud Identity Engine. That's another thing. That's if you have like an on-prem or a cloud-based like Active Directory server, you can integrate that with Palo. So instead of having to do user authentication on your firewall, you can do it at the cloud, like the Palo Cloud Identity Engine. It's in the cloud. And then that will talk to all your Palo products. So any existing AD can be integrated in. You don't have to worry about who's doing authentication because Palo takes care of it at the cloud for you.
Great, thank you. We have another question in the chat. How long will we have the lab available for us to try the modules?
Yeah, so the lab is always available. I think your guys's are set to maybe just today. The default checkout for this lab is 3 days. But if you want to check it out again or go through any of the other modules, as you can see, it took us, just 30 minutes to go through module 1 and 2. So there's plenty more content for you guys to go through. You can always just go to the website. If you're here, I believe you already have an account, but if not, shoot us an email. We'll help you get set up an account on the website. And then anytime, these are on-demand labs, so you just hit Launch Lab, you're good to go. You can go through it. And like I said, each module can be done independently, so you guys can just kick straight off into Module 3, Module 4, etc. at your own pace.
Yes, that's great. I'd like to reiterate that fact that you are able, as a customer, to access labs and learning paths at wwt.com at any time. So you can go on, even after this date, launch the lab, go through any learning paths. We have 300 plus labs available and over 100 learning paths for you to check out as well.
Cool. Any more questions?
Let's see what we got here.
I know you guys got something. Come on.
What are some of the additional features on your roadmap?
For like Palo in general, or?
Probably for Palo Alto is what they're asking, but that might have gone hand in hand with...
Yeah, maybe I touched on that.
You might have touched on that a bit.
Well, if you guys remember early, I'll be like more broad. I talked about how we have a Foundations version 10 fundamental lab, the one we're looking at today, a Foundations version 10 intermediate lab. So it kind of just makes natural sense to eventually make an advanced level lab. That's on the roadmap. I'm going to be transitioning more to cloud security, but then back when we have downtime again, I'll try to work back my way to Palo. We also have a version 11 Foundations lab. Version 11 isn't widely used yet, but whenever that becomes the more prominent version, I'm going to go back and make a version 11 intermediate and advanced lab as well as fleshing out these learning paths, because these learning paths get a lot of use, and I think they show it's just the next evolution of the lab. Like, labs are great, but having the ability to look at articles and videos too, I think is just really the next step.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Checking in chat here. Do we have any more questions at this time about the Palo Alto Next Gen Firewall Lab? Oh, is there a time frame on additional features?
So the updates to the intermediate lab that I've been working on, this is the wrong one, this one, the intermediate one, I have 4 new pieces or maybe 4 or 5 new pieces to the lab, or to the learning path, and I think 2 or 3 of those are going to be added to the lab. That should be done end of October. I was hoping to have it done by this, but there's just outside circumstances I didn't have time to get it all done. But that'll be done by the end of the year, so the intermediate will have some updates. And then I don't have a timeline on the advanced content, but I would like to get that out at some point.
Thank you. And just to also mention that every quarterly basis, we're putting out around 20 to 25 new learning paths. So be sure to keep checking those out, in addition to Palo Alto as well. And let's see if we have any other additional questions here. It looks like that might be all the questions in chat. If you can take a second here, if you have a few more questions, let us know. All right, it's looking like that's a wrap on that. So we appreciate you coming to our live lab for Palo Alto Next Gen Firewall. We encourage you to visit wwt.com, where you can find more future live events coming up, and live lab workshops, and also find those labs and learning paths that we talked about, 300 plus labs and 100 plus learning paths. Please come back, upskill, and you're also able now to earn your certificate if you pass the Learning Path modules, 80% or higher, and then you can share your skills with everyone. Download a certificate, earn your badge, and share it on social media. So see you next time. We look forward to sharing another live lab with you in November.
Thank you.